Okay, so there's some question between, let's say for the binomial, we have where we got the mean is equal to NP and the standard deviation is equal to the square root of n times p times 1 minus p. And then we have the alternative form is where the mean is equal to p and the standard deviation is equal to p times 1 minus p over n. Okay. So when do we use which? Okay. This is if you're dealing with counts. And this is if you're dealing with proportions. So I could ask the the same question in two different forms. Okay, I could say I flip a coin 10 times. Okay, what is the probability I have 6 heads? Okay, that's dealing with counts. We count how many heads we get. This can be asked the exact same way by saying I flip a coin 10 times. Okay, and then what is the probability that 60% of the flips are heads, or 0.6 rather than 60%. So these two things, they're the exact same question, right? Except this one, we're dealing with a percentage, or 0.6, and over here we have a count 6. Okay, as long as you can keep track of which is which, then you'll be fine. Okay, so if you're dealing with proportions and you want to continue working in proportions, so that means your answer and everything you report will be in terms of in a proportion or a percentage or something like that. Then you can use this. Right? For me, I prefer working in counts because especially when you try to do continuity corrections, it gets really complicated, or it gets really weird when you're dealing with proportions. Okay, everything in my mind is much easier with counts because they're just whole numbers. Because let's say let's say we're dealing with 20 flips. Okay. So over here, 6 heads, I can leave it at 6. This proportion would suddenly change to 30%. Okay, or 0.3. And if we were to do a continuity correction, okay, so probability, let's say I say 6 heads or more. Okay, we could do it with binomial, and we would have this. If we wanted to do a normal approximation with a continuity correction, where would I draw my cutoff? 5.5. 5.5, right? So my cutoff would be at 5.5. Okay, same thing over here. Let's say that 30% or more of the things are heads. Where should I draw my continuity correction here? This is not as clear. Okay, you'd actually have to go over here to 6. You'd have to convert it from proportion to counts. Then you figure out 5.5, and then you turn this back into a proportion, and you would get 0.275 or something. Okay, but it's like extra steps, because trying to figure out a continuity correction based off a proportion, it's not pleasant. Okay, or it's not intuitive. Not that continuity corrections are super intuitive to begin with, but I think it's a lot easier to see that this would be either 5.5 or 6.5 depending on how it's phrased, whereas this, there's really There's no guidance here. Okay. So anyway, but if you're just dealing with single numbers or something rather than or more situations or things like that, they're functionally equivalent. It's just one you're getting whole numbers and counts, and the other you're getting proportions. Okay, is that good?
And it has nothing to do with whether or not it's a sample versus an entire population?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, because the binomial is always you're just repeating something several times, and yeah. So.
Can you elaborate on that example? Can you show us how to go from 30% to the counts? How do you go from proportion to counts?
Oh, yeah. You just do 30% times 20, right? So you just do 0.3 times 20, and you'd say, oh, that's equal to getting 6 heads. Okay, and then you'd say, okay, well, if I'm dealing with 6 heads,
okay,
then you figure out your continuity correction. Your cutoff would be at 5.5 heads, and then you say, okay, well, 5.5 divided by 20 is going to be 0.275. So then that becomes your appropriate cutoff.
thanks.
Yeah, it's not. It's just extra steps, and it's easy to confuse yourself somewhere along the way. So that's why I generally stick with this. Okay, but this exists and it shows up in the book, but I didn't really emphasize it too much.
But they should give you the same answers?
They will give you the same answers, yeah. Because it's just the same question just being asked a slightly different way, right? You could say, I don't know. You could say like $5 off of $50, or no, the coupons end up being different. Okay. All right. So the challenge portion of the lab is, I think, the challenging part, because the task I gave you actually wasn't, I didn't think was too terrible. It was import a data set, read it in, and then just like find the mean, find the standard deviation, or like create a histogram. Okay, these are very basic things to do, but the hard part is getting used to doing these things in R. Okay, in an unfamiliar way. And so one thing you ran into was this NA problem, right? So you read it in, you say, okay, find the mean, and it says NA, right? And that's frustrating, okay? And so some of you guys asked on the Facebook group, and I didn't give you a clear answer right away because I wanted you to try to explore, but then someone said, well, this is what worked for me, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess.
Sorry,
that's fine, but and the other students appreciate that, but yeah, it's, you know, when you go out there, you're gonna have to, well, I do the same thing, right? Well, because when I get stuck, I just go to Google and I search, or I go through the help files and I search, and there's forums and you can ask questions and things like that. But so the problem with the NA is that you know, I don't know how many lines there are on that table, okay? But some of those lines had missing data, and so when you ask R to calculate the mean, it doesn't default to just calculating the mean of the numbers you have, okay? And I posted this in Facebook, but a silly example is, let's say in a family there's 4 kids, okay? And I say, oh, you know, the ages of the 4 kids are, there's a 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and I don't remember how old the other kid is, okay? And then I say, okay, well, what's the average age of these kids, okay? The answer is you have no idea, because that last kid could be 1, that last kid could be 20, So the average age, you have no idea. So you have to say, oh, I don't know, okay? But the best you can do, you can say, well, I can give you the average of the 3 ages you reported to me. And you can say, well, that's this number, okay? 7 years old, or 6.7, or something like that. And R does the same thing, okay? It has a list of numbers and it says, well, some of these numbers are missing, so I can't give you an answer. And then, so you have to explicitly tell it, well, pretend like those missing numbers don't exist, and just give me the average of the ones that do exist, and it will report that to you. In cases where you've got large sets of numbers, it's probably okay if just a few of your answers are missing. It's probably okay to ignore the missing ones and just do that, okay? But other times, there could be, serious implications there. So that's just something to watch out for, okay? The syntax, this question of the dollar signs and things like that, okay? So a lot of times when you read in a data set, it's like a grid, okay? You've got columns representing variables and rows representing subjects, okay? And you can reference any of these things. So let's say we called this this thing, let's give it the data set, let's give it the name data, okay? You could ask for any one particular cell by referencing the row and the column, okay? So if I wanted to get what's in here, I could say data, and then I use bracket notation, and then I would say, well, give me the third row, second column. Okay. Now I'm just having a freak out moment where I'm like, is it actually 2, 3? But I'm pretty sure it's row first and then column, and that will reference this cell. Okay. If you leave this blank, one of the rows, one of the things blank, and you go bracket comma 2, this will give you the second column. And if you go bracket 3 comma blank, this will give you the third row. So that's one way to reference data. Okay. Another way is that a lot of times when you read in data, the columns will have names. Okay. The name might be gender. And this might be, I don't know, state, or something, etc., etc., etc. So I could get the second column by just writing data, and then if R knows that it's named state, I can go $ state. This will give me the second column because the column is named state. Alright? And so I think you guys did that with the blood pressure data. One of the columns was called numeric or something, which is the actual value of each of those things. When you read in the data, you had a bunch of columns that kind of indicated the location and all of these other demographic bits of information. And one was the actual value. So the $ just kind of says, well, you can specify column names that way. You could even you can do bracket notation, and you can say, give me the column that's named state this way. So this is generally easier, but all of these would work also. Okay. And again, you can always go on the internet and search for data notation R but yeah, is all of these things, the first few times you do it, is gonna be frustrating, and then as you get more comfortable, it becomes easier. But yeah, there's a balance I have to run in this class where I don't want to give you too much and just make you guys hate everything. But then, but I do want you guys to just get a little bit familiar with using some kind of software, okay? And whether it's R or SPSS or Stata or something, there's certain things that are just common, okay? The notation changes from place to place, but reading in data, that's very common. Cleaning up data is also a common thing, but that's like a whole another can of worms that I don't want to go into. But yeah, so yes.
How do you do, because like we're, one of the ones was the mean of Africa, like how do you make that into the subset of Africa?
Oh, okay, yeah. Right. So this bracket notation, okay, you can do subsets the same way, okay? There's let's say I want the third row and the fourth row and the fifth row, but not anything else, okay? So one shortcut was I could do 3 through 5, and that represents the numbers 3, 4, and 5. I can also create this manually using a command called C, and I just say stick the numbers 3, 4, and 5 together and treat that as an object together. Okay, so I can say data bracket 3, 4, 5 like that, comma blank. Okay, and that will give me all the information in rows 3, 4, and 5. I could also I can specify the column I want. Okay, I can say C3, 4, 5, and I can say 2, or I can indicate state. There's a few ways I can do this. I could do it this way, and this will give me just the state information for rows 3, 4, and 5.
And you don't have to put the $sign in front of it?
So that's it's a different thing, right? So here I'm doing bracket notation. I could do the $sign, but then things get weird again, okay? So when I do the $sign, this references automatically just this column of numbers, okay? And if I were to just say data $sign state, it would just appear like kind of a sequence, not of numbers, but a sequence of states, okay? So if I wanted to do the same thing here, I could do data $sign state, okay? And then I would use a bracket here. There would be no comma, because this is now a one-dimensional object, okay? Over here I had 2 dimensions. I've got rows and I have columns. But data $sign state is just one string of states, okay? There's only one dimension. There's neither rows nor columns. It's just kind of not a string, but it's just a we call it a vector, okay? So I would just, if I want just the third, fourth, and fifth items here, I could do state 3, 3, 4, 5. So that would give me 3, 4, and 5 in that. Okay, notice no comma outside of that object there. Yeah.
Does the C stand for anything?
The C stands for concatenate, which just means shove things together. Okay. If you use Excel, that word might have appeared in your vocabulary, but it's not a commonly used word in everyday language. but it appears quite often in computer speak. Alright. Okay, so we wanted to subset on those that are like Africa. Okay? Alright. Well, I don't, maybe I'll subset on those that where the state is equal to California or something. Okay. So I could do a like a Boolean expression. Okay, Boolean meaning I ask it, is this true or not? And it will say true or false. Okay, so a simple one, I would just do 1 equals 1, and it would report back true. Okay, and you guys might have noticed that capital TRUE is not the same as capital mixed with lowercase t and stuff. So yes, and then if I say is 1 equals 0, it will report back false. Okay. Notice I have to use 2 equals because if the single equals is like an assignment. Okay, I would say A equals 1, and then from here on out, whenever R sees the letter A, it's going to plug in the value 1. Okay, and then it'll error out if you try to assign 0 equal to 1 or something. It'll say, what are you doing? Okay, so anyway, I could say data $state equal California. Okay. Alright, and then so let's say I have Alabama, California, Alaska, California, and Nevada. Alright, so if I did this, if I said data $state equals California, what it will return back, false, false, then true. Okay, and then just for shortcut, I'm going to say false, true, false, true, false. Okay, because it's just going down this thing and it's saying, is it equal to California or not? It's going to say false, true, false, true, false, false, true, true, whatever. Okay. Okay, so this thing can be used kind of like this sequence, give me rows 3, 4, and 5. I can give it a bunch of trues and falses, and then R will say, okay, if I see true, I want to include that row, and if I see false, I don't want to include that row. Okay, so if I take this thing, okay, I could say, well, give me data, but the rows, okay, and I could plug in, and here I have to actually type out false and true, but just for simplicity, I'm just using the letters here, and I could say, give me back the second column. Now, what would the result of this be? So here, this part says which rows I want. So which rows am I going to include?
The true one.
Yeah, the true ones. So I don't include the first. I do include the second. Don't include the third. Do include the fourth. Don't include the fifth. Okay. And well, then I would need one for everything here. Okay. Otherwise, it does this recycling operation, which I won't get into. But let's say that my data set only had 5 rows here. Okay. Okay. So my answer is only going to have the results from 2 rows. Okay. That's what this first part says. And this says which column I want. Okay, so which column am I going to get? The second column. So the result of this thing is going to be CA, CA. Because I'm only getting the second and the fourth row, and from those rows, the stuff that's in the second column.
So you don't have to put down like California like you would the state.
I,
Or-
well, instead of, okay, so I don't have to, I could do it this way. But this is gonna be really tedious to try to do for 5,000 rows, okay? But how did I get this thing to begin with? I just did data $state equals CA, okay? So, just imagine I had, 5,000 rows, okay, so I would have a sequence of 5,000 trues and falses here. So, instead of this, I could do, I could just plug in this because this thing represents this thing, okay? So I'm gonna do data bracket data $state equals CA, and I have to put quotes there, okay? So this thing, this function or Boolean statement represents this thing, and then I could say, well, give me back the second column, or I could reassign it to any other column of interest. Okay, so if I say the second column, it'll spit back CA, which is not too interesting, but then I could say, well, give me the one that actually had, the numeric value that I'm interested in, okay? And then it might report back 142 and 87, whatever those numbers are, okay? And I probably had some kind of variant in the command there.
In this example,
Yes.
the number has to be one of the columns.
Yeah, one of the columns would have to be called number. Okay, and maybe this one 142, 63, 87, 20. Okay, I have no idea what these numbers represent. It doesn't matter. Okay. Oh, and if I would have to do number like that, or alternatively I could do data $number bracket data $state equals California or something. So there's this idea of nesting things into other things, okay? Or just getting used to the idea that this thing represents this, and instead of having to plug in this part, I could just plug in this thing that represents that into there to get what I'm looking for. Is that okay?
Not really, but.
Not really, you guys hate it, but
So frustrating.
it is frustrating, but there is right, because there's a certain part where it's like, just give me Excel and I'll have this thing, and then I can click these buttons and say sort, and then just highlight, I can highlight the rows that I want, and then click the chart button and it'll just spit out a chart, okay? And then you can say, oh, okay, so I have to do 7 continents, no big deal, okay? Or really, probably 5, unless you really want Antarctica or something, and Australia or whatever, okay. So you could do it that way, and you're like, okay, well, this isn't too bad, right? And maybe it's like you have to do reports once a week, so it takes an hour once a week. Okay. Well, with if you get used to the idea of using commands to take care of the sorting and the filtering and all of that stuff, all you need is just kind of, you just have to write the code once, and then you can just have it run every single time. And by running the code itself, it will take care of the row cleanup operations for you. Okay, so you can, because to do, to filter out California in Excel, I'm not sure what the fastest way to do it would be, but it would probably be sort by state, and then you'd have to search for California, and then you can delete everything above and everything below, and then use that for something. I don't know. You could write a macro, but then that's the exact same problem, just in a different language, VBA rather than R. So it's uncomfortable and clunky at first, but the more you use it, the less you'll hate it. But in this class, you know, we're only going to use it a tiny bit, so probably by the end you'll still say you hate it. And then that's just, I can't do too much. Yes?
I definitely appreciate the value in like creating all these subsets, and it's interesting to see it like play out conceptually on like computer coding, but like my personal issue was I didn't really know the language, so it took me like an hour to realize, oh, I was supposed to put quotation marks, I can't just refer to it with like words without quotations. And I was like, grr.
Yeah, that
Like,
is,
And it's not quite clear on that link that's right under the
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Like,
say.
the way that they name the sets, and then, you know, you really just have to play with it, literally.
yeah.
Like I feel like it was worse Googling because they came up with so many
So
different
many.
like vocabulary. I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. So.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I probably thought the same things when I first started learning R. And it just, one of those things that's difficult to really teach especially in this format where it's lecture style rather than in a lab setting where because unless you all bring your laptops and we work to it and you guys can say, you know, this is going on. And probably the best way is to kind of play with it and struggle and hate it and then realize, oh, this is what matters. And I'm sorry that it sucks that process does.
It's not bad, it's just not fun.
Yeah,
It's no
that
fun.
sums up computer programming.
Just
Yes.
a question. So if you type in a command and like say you miss like quotation mark or something stupid that it needed, and then it doesn't give you the output that you want, are you able to copy what you wrote
You hit the up
before?
arrow,
Yeah, 'cause
and
I tried to.
it should give you the previous thing you typed in.
Oh, okay.
It should.
And can you physically copy that and basically just change whatever you messed up on? Because I tried to, it wasn't working, and I had to type out the whole thing every
Oh.
single time.
Okay.
When you push the up arrow,
Yeah.
it prints that whole thing out, and then you can backspace
Oh,
in
okay.
that
Yeah.
line. Like you
It's
can't
also
click on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What time is it? Okay.
have a
Let's here. Let me just show you maybe a couple things that could help. And so in 2 weeks, I've made Lab 2 due. Okay. And I should probably include the link for Lab 2 in this week's homework, but it'll be due in 2 weeks from now. So it's probably a good idea to get started this week. And that one, it's probably not going to be too much fun either. I don't know. Okay. So another thing, if you're running into problems, okay, well not this isn't going to solve all of your problems, but one thing where it's like if you hate having to do this typing, retyping, okay, like you type something in, but you made like one small mistake, so then it's erroring out. One thing you can do is in this top part, you can click this thing that says like create a new R script or text file or whatever you want, okay, and then it will open up this thing, okay, and and then this is where you can include, you can start typing in things, and then blah blah blah, and you're like, okay, I want to do this. Well, you highlight the row that you want, and then you click run, okay? And then when you do that, okay, it says, oh, you made a mistake. I see this semicolon, and I have no idea what you're talking about, okay? So you say, oh, okay, well, then I can go back here, and you can delete the semicolon, and then you can try running it, okay? And it says, okay, well, I'm trying to read in Jika Jikala, and and I don't see that thing, okay? And then so you can go back and you can modify things up here. This is a feature of RStudio. It's not built into regular R. So if for some reason you couldn't get RStudio and you won't have that thing, but you know, that's just a nice thing that RStudio does to kind of make your life a little easier.
Can you show how you got there again?
So in the this green plus, okay, or you can just, I think, file new R script, okay, and that should cause this thing to pop up. It should. Okay. What else? Let's see, what did I tell you to do? Okay, so I said read in this thing. Okay, well actually, so I can just do read that table, and then I think I can say now I'm confusing myself. So how did you guys read the table in? Just curious.
What import database?
Okay, you did import.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I think if you do read. Is that? No? Tell it. No, I'm gonna have to. So I think, let's see if this works. Okay, great.
Whoa.
So, I cheated a little bit, but there's something called URL, and it tells R. I'm going to give you a file location, okay? And then you can say, well, I want you to read the thing in from this location directly. And I think, so if I click this, it shows up right here, right? So this is what it looks like. Right, and so it says, okay, well, the thing you're looking up is mean systolic blood pressure, and from 2009 in Europe, the country of Hungary, and Hungary, I don't know, how do you pronounce it? 25 plus male, and this is what it displays, but then the actual mean value is this. So, so I could refer to, if I do BP numeric, then it gives me 386 values, right? And these are, and you can see that the very first one, sure indeed, matches up, or each row, right? 135.3, 120.7, and so on and so on. So this is just a vector of 386 values here. forget if it's rm.na or
NA.rm.
na.rm.
Mhm.
I always, my brain can never get that straight. Okay, so then it says, okay, well this is the mean of those. And then you can say, okay, well, take that vector and make a histogram of it. And then it spits this out, right? And then if you want to increase the number of breaks in the histogram, this breaks things, it's not a direct thing, but it kind of, it does the best it can to get close to 30. And it has some algorithm to decide exactly how many columns it's going to give you. And so you get something like this, right?
I
And then
noticed-
The breaks are the
the breaks is
column
how
thing?
many of these columns you get, okay? So when you don't say anything, it defaults to there's some number that it defaults to based on how many values, and you can, you know, get more breaks or fewer. And that's not as useful of a histogram. You know, you can try to say a whole bunch, and it'll give you a histogram that looks like this, okay? And again, it's not exactly this number, but it tries to get reasonably close to it.
Seems like default looks more like a smooth curve than when you put
Yeah,
30.
so if you look at this, you'd say it's unimodal, skewed left, slightly skewed left, I don't know. And then if you add more breaks, you say, oh, okay, well, still skewed left, maybe not unimodal. And if you do like a whole bunch of breaks, you say, oh, okay, well, yeah. It's a little bit tougher, right? But okay. So you have that. And yeah, so again, if I did BP and then I specified, again, everything is case sensitive, WHO.region, so you can't use spaces, but you can put in dots or underscores. We get 386 values, and then I can say, okay, well, is that equal to Europe? And then we get a whole bunch of true falses. And then, so then I can use this to say, okay, well now I want BP numeric, but just where it's equal to Europe. Okay, and so I get like 106 values. One of them's an NA. And we can see, let me see if I can. So it might be a little bit tough to see, okay? But the first number, so all it's doing is it's taking the results of this thing, okay? BP World Health Organization region equals Europe is true, false, 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 true, okay? And we can see that it indeed is true, false, 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 true, okay? And so that means when I take this thing of a whole bunch of trues and falses, it's going to go into here, and then it says, okay, so the first number that's from Europe is 135.3, and then it skips all of these other ones because they're not equal to Europe, and then we finally get to the Russian Federation, 128.4, and then so on and so forth. Yes?
I don't wanna make this any more difficult, but in the display value column or so, where that range is in the brackets and
Yeah.
such, like, what exactly, like if we were trying to get that for some apparent reason, like how would we put that in there?
Okay, so you don't it doesn't appear this way, okay? Because it all just appears as stuff here. But this, R is going to treat this as text, okay? And over here, it's gonna think it treats this as a number, yeah. Or it can coerce it into a number easily. Whereas the other thing, it can't be coerced into a number. It's
And is it because the brackets are there?
it's because the brackets are there. There's like a space, a bracket, a dash. It doesn't know what to do with these things, right? If somebody reported, if you said, how old are you? And they give you a number like this, 28.6 bracket 18.7 dash something, you'd say, what? You know, but if they give you a straight number like this, you'd say, okay, oddly specific, but sure. But you know, you don't know what to do with this. Like, because we're humans and we're smart, we can say, oh, this is some central value and this is some lower range and upper range. We can figure that out, but the computer doesn't. It doesn't know that, so it's just gonna say, huh? So it just treats this as text. It's much easier. Okay. That's that. I know. You're probably like, what? You did this? Yeah. You had to work so hard just to get something little. I think it was good that you struggled through it. I think it was more of a learning experience because of the struggle than had I just said, here's 10 commands of code that you're just gonna highlight and copy and paste. And
That probably still would have been difficult.
I know.
So yeah. So now you had the displeasure of working with R, but now you understand a little more, rather than. If I just spoon feed you all the code, it's you probably won't learn as much. Well, that's what I tell myself. That's how I justify these atrocious assignments. But I don't think they're too terrible. Okay, well, let me pause this and then we'll